One of the most powerful conversations you can have with your students is to teach them directly that learning isn't magical. Learning happens as the result of the things that you actually do. Begin with that sentiment. Tell learners that learning isn't magical. It actually comes from the things that you do. And so you can begin to ask them, what are some things that you actually do? What are things that you do that people you notice in your community doing that actually helps them grow as learners? One of the things that students often name then is listening. I want to draw on that further. I want to ask them a follow up to that. Who are you listening to? Are you listening to just the teacher in the room? And the point being that no, we're actually listening to everybody, to everyone. By stating this clearly, we're stating our value, our belief that we are all learners, that we're all learning together, and that students, that learners have significant capacity, that I am the teacher, yes, but I'm not the sole arbiter of knowledge, and that knowledge is grown together in a community. So I want to draw this point out explicitly that we're listening to everybody. To be able to learn from everybody, we also need to actually say some things. We're actually going to need to talk. People who are learning more, people who are growing themselves in their knowledge, are people who are saying something. They're talking, they're listening, they're talking, they're sharing their ideas. So as they name these things, I'm going to draw these ideas out. We're sharing ideas. So again, the things that I write up, I have pre-thought those things, but I'm expecting that students will say something close to this. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to just be writing exactly what I'm planning. I'm going to go into that conversation with loose expectations and also knowing that I might have to conduct that conversation, that when somebody says something about talk, then I can draw out further points around sharing ideas, sharing thinking, and attach something simple to something that connects to greater, larger values. In this conversation, students also often share that an important part is to ask questions. And if they're not getting to that one, if a student doesn't just say that organically, I'll, sometimes when I have this conversation, the room is a little bit quiet and I might say, what might I do if I don't know something? If something isn't clear to me? Because I know that learning means that I'm going to be challenged and it's going to be hard. What might I do in that situation? And right there, I've kind of queued them up to on their own get at, oh, well, we're going to ask questions. So I'm like, yes, now I'm going to write that idea down. So here we are. We are going to ask questions. So when we ask questions, that's suggesting something. When I ask questions, it's because I'm really curious. We're curious people. Again, making these value statements that as a community, that these are all attached to some sort of some communal values around caring for each other and that are central to learning. And so by coming back to these main central values, we can have many, many conversations that attach to those. Another important point is that where we take risks, that we make mistakes. Taking risks, taking intellectual risks is an important point to teach learners that I might not know everything, that I'm not just going to say the things that I just know. By asking questions, by wondering aloud, and by talking and sharing your ideas, you might end up saying something that you're not totally sure about. You might just go for it, even if you're not sure. And that might lead to making mistakes. And that in this community, making mistakes is an important part of learning. That if we're really going to learn, if we're really going to take charge of our learning, that we're likely going to be doing these things. We're going to be making mistakes and we're going to be trying again. We're going to try again. As I'm listening, as I'm talking, as I'm asking questions, we also know that we are really having to think deeply. We're thinking, what's happening on the inside? We're thinking, we're wondering, we're maybe. So right then, I have an opportunity to attach some metacognitive coaching to what learners are actually expected to do. I might tell them inside your head, you might be thinking, does this make sense to me? Is there a question I can ask? Or you might be saying, what does that go with that I already know and understand? What is it that I know? And how can I use that to help me figure out what I don't know? Or you might be looking at somebody in the room who's talking, one of your peers next to you is saying something, and you might be wondering, do I agree with that? Do I understand? Again, out loud, as I've named this, specific learning behavior, I'm also attaching to it the metacognitives coaching that students need to be able to do that work, to bring more awareness to what's happening for them internally and to normalize all of that. I want for them to see these as their action items, like their actual role in the classroom. By naming it in this particular way, we're helping to normalize challenge. We're normalizing our challenge as the expectation, that we're telling learners that you're not just going to know things like that. That idea that learning isn't magical. Sometimes we like are near somebody and they say an answer and we think, well, that they just knew that, right? So right off the bat, naming that that's not actually magic. That person must have been doing something to be able to understand that. And that becomes so much more accessible. This helps build confidence. When I am sitting next to somebody who understands something or knows something, it allows me to then be curious. How did they get that? What question did they ask? What were they doing that perhaps then I can do as well? So this is creating this access point to learning. It makes learning accessible for all of us because we can all do things. It's not just magical. Again, having this foundation that attaches to your community values is so important. By having this really rich community conversation, later these items will go onto an anchor chart and you'll reference this again and again. I would also start my block with this conversation, teaching them explicitly. This would be my day one conversation that I have with learners, is teaching them this. And then throughout the block, I would maybe pause and notice, I just saw so and so. They were really listening. I could tell because of their body language. We might then add more to this. We might add more to listening. How do we know that we're listening? By having this anchor chart, it also allows me as a teacher in the room it reminds me. It's helpful for students, but it's also a reminder for me. Keep coming back to those beliefs, those values, those norms, because what I'm teaching is, of course, I'm teaching mathematics, but I'm also teaching learners how to learn for today, but for forever. And so these are the types of conversations that kind of have that huge impact on learning. So try having this conversation with your learners and let me know how that goes and what great things your kids come up with.